EU summit collapses over voting rights. Tony Blair says he won't play the blame game.
The fact is, we've got to find a way through. We've got the time to do it. And in the meantime, enlargement goes ahead.
The Queen leaves hospital earlier than expected. She's now recovering at Buckingham Palace. Stranded for 3 days on a remote beach, the British tourist rescued by the Australian Coast Guard. And Scholes goals see United take the Manchester derby and top spot in the Premiership. Good evening, this is BBC News 24. Critical talks on the future of the European Union and its new constitution have collapsed. European leaders have been meeting in Brussels to thrash out a deal on a new enlarged EU, but they've stumbled over the issue of voting power. The BBC has learned of an al-Qaeda plot to blow up the British embassy in Yemen just weeks before the British consulate in Istanbul was targeted. The British ambassador to Yemen, Francis Guy, has described it as a worrying disclosure. 20 militants were detained 3 months ago by Yemeni intelligence officers. They confessed they were working on plans to crash a truck bomb through the embassy gates. Now, former army officers in the Iraqi southern city of Basra have held an angry demonstration over what they say is a 4-month delay in the payment of their pensions. About 200 retired officers gathered outside the headquarters of the US-led coalition, threw stones at the guards inside and set up blockades of burning tyres. It's the first time that this running dispute has turned violent. The United States is threatening to impose sanctions against Syria because of its alleged failure to act against terrorism. President Bush has signed legislation providing for sanctions if Syria fails to restrain militants, withdraw its army from Lebanon, or halt its alleged chemical and biological weapons programs. The measures that could be imposed include a ban on US exports to Syria and the freezing of its assets in the United States. Now, many shops have started offering huge discounts because sales have been so poor in the last few weeks. Retailers are concerned that people are leaving their Christmas. This is BBC News 24. It's 6:15. Let's take a look at the headlines. Talks at the EU summit have collapsed over voting rights. Tony Blair says he won't play the blame game. The Queen has left the King Edward VII Hospital earlier than expected. She's recovering at Buckingham Palace after undergoing 2 operations. A British tourist has been rescued by the Australian Coast Guard after he was stranded for 3 days.
And in sport, Paul Scholes inspires Manchester United to the top of the Premiership. Returning from injury, Scholes scores twice as United win the Manchester derby. Chelsea, beaten by Bolton, slipped to second. Michael Vaughan's unbeaten on 50 as England battle to avoid defeat in the second test in Candy. They need another 279 runs with a day left. And hospital tests confirmed today that Jonny Wilkinson's fractured a bone in his neck. It's likely he had the injury as he helped England win the World Cup. All those stories to come in full in Sports Day at 6:30, so join us then.
See you later, Sonia. Thanks very much indeed. Now, the police are investigating how a young woman was killed when a 5-foot wall collapsed in Exeter. Her body was discovered in the early hours of the morning. Good evening, this is BBC News 24. It's 6:30. A very warm welcome if you've just joined us. Now, a summary of the news. European Union leaders have failed to reach agreement on a new constitutional treaty for the EU after 2 days.